Ahoy! It's your old buddy Hambone, and I'm here to tell you about a new 5th edition adventure from Slowquest. The adventure's called The Goblings, and it's on Kickstarter now. It throws your players in the role of freshly spawned goblins, hurled from their slimy goblin nest into the forest. Their quest is to scavenge, steal, craft, whatever they can do to piece together the most glorious gift for the Goblin Queen. The adventure is filled with whimsical and weird illustrations, packaged with fold-out maps, reference cards, and a bunch more cool stuff. It's live on Kickstarter now, and you can get there by heading to slowquest.com/Kickstarter or check the notes for this show. So make sure to boogie on down to Kickstarter and back the Goblings today.
This is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He was like, today we're going to take it easy, Hambone. We're just going to talk about things we like this year. Stu Horvath.
Hey, wait a minute. This is your idea.
I know, but I couldn't really tie it into the joke well. It's the end of the year, guys. We're running on fumes. We got a few more episodes left. But this episode, I was like, you know what? Normally we do a holiday gift guide every year. We're coming in a little late for that. Honestly, everything has been kind of weird still this year. So we're really just going to focus on a couple things that we each liked and where to pick them up. More often than not, we're going to tell you to go to Noble Night Games and Exalted Funeral, because that's where we do our shopping, and that's really where you can get everything that you want. Between the two places, there's nothing you can't find. And for the rest, get gouged on eBay. But, you know, there's been a few creators that I've loved this year, a few new artists that I've fallen in love with. There's been some games that I was really excited to get and I'm really excited to play. So we thought we'd just kind of chat about that a little bit.
Fair enough.
So, Stu, what's on your radar for this year?
You know, like so much of my time was taken up by the book that I have piles and piles of new things that I haven't gotten to really, read. I feel like my list is going to be a little anemic compared to yours, but I think that I would have to start off with the Alien RPG. You heard the last episode.
Yeah.
So
we've talked about that a lot in the last couple months, and with good reason.
I think that it's just a fantastic game. I think that it satisfies neophytes and veterans alike. It does exactly what it promises to do, and it delivers a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime role-playing experience if you're doing the cinematic games. Yeah, I think that you should check that out. The starter set is a perfect kind of package for, I guess Chariot of the Gods is about a 6-hour game. Both of my sessions ran 6 hours. So you get a rule book, you get some counter things and a nice map and a whole adventure and some cards, and you're good to go. If you like it, you can expand to the Destroyer of Worlds and Colonial Marines cinematic adventure, or you could get the rule book and the Colonial Marines handbook, which is sort of what you need for putting together campaign play, which works a little differently. I haven't read the Colonial Marines book yet because, like I said, I don't have a lot of time late, but it looks cool. I didn't think that campaign play was something that this game was going to excel at, but just flipping through the Colonial Marines handbook, I was sort of like, oh yeah, no, I see how you would do this now. And that is pretty cool. And there's a framework in there too. So all told, I think they're doing a great job with it. That's what Free League does, though. They just kind of put together really good experiences that are kind of, cater to all levels of play. And this one's no different.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, box sets, starter sets are always such a great thing to give yourself or give someone else as a gift if you're trying to get them into the hobby. And I think this year has been really good for it, because you get the Alien starter set. You have the RuneQuest starter set, which just dropped.
That just dropped. I haven't gotten mine yet, but it looks sweet.
Yeah, I can't wait till I get mine. And I will tell you that if it's anything like the Cthulhu starter set, I know it's going to be a hit. And that's one of the things I'm going to tell you when you boogie on down to Noble Night Games. That is the spot you want to get your starter sets from, and get any other kind of big tier books that are going to complement that starter set and hopefully lead you to some kind of campaign play, because we are still rocking and rolling on the Discords and on the Zooms and on the Google Meets with these games. now it kind of feels like we might be seeing a return to tables with a lot of our friends. So there's nothing better to do than find a new campaign to dive into and start the new year off right. So, some of my picks were actually going to be the Alien box, the RuneQuest box set. If you have a friend who is into any kind of fantasy or sci-fi, there's got to be a box set for you that's going to help you start that experience off right. So check it out, Noble Knight Games. Any kind of box set you need, any kind of campaign book you're looking for. On the other side of it, for me, this was like a big year for zines. I bought a lot of zines this year. And for me, it's a different kind of experience because coming up with your standard fare of Dungeons and Dragons and big books, seeing these new games and new concepts and ideas expressed in zines was the stuff that I grew up knowing, but in like the music business where it was all rock and roll zines and just art zines. There was no zines that were like, oh, this little handheld zine, this has a whole game in it. In these pages, there's a whole game you can play. It was just like, no, it's just, normally an interview with a very aloof band and a couple album reviews. So coming to it this year and really seeing like the wide array of different zines, I'm pretty excited about it. So a couple that really got me hot and bothered was Black Knights, which is David Hoskins and Luke Gearing. I fell absolutely head over heels in love with David Hoskins' art. We had him on the show before. I think he's got such a cool and distinct art style where, some of the stuff that I've seen him do in OSE really kind of harkens back to like, in a lot of ways, like old G.I. Joe comics and old D&D comics, but in a very bright, colorful, more leaning towards the fantasy way. Black Knights is something a little different. I think it's something really special. It's just a book of different kind of Black Knights, and they're all just so beautifully drawn, and all the highlights are in white or in red, and the stats are there, and like cool things that you can like really incorporate into your game and different ways of thinking about knights and what could be considered a knight. So it's a small zine. I got it from Exalted Funeral, and I am pleased as punch with this purchase because it really does highlight a different kind of thinking and approach to a really, in a lot of ways, traditional creature in Dungeons and Dragons and in the hobby at large.
Yeah, I think that's nominally for Troika, but you could totally use it for anything.
Oh yeah, I'll find a way to get into something, man. It's pretty cool.
There's cool stuff in there.
Another thing that really landed on my radar, we had Amanda Lee Frank on the show earlier this year, but Vampire Cruise, this is something that the minute it popped up during Zine Quest, I was pumped about. I really adore Amanda's art, and this really does deliver. It's a beautiful zine. The colors on the cover and the design of everything is really cool. It's something different. Again, it's something that is not quite what many who are involved in the hobby may be used to, but I think it's a good step in the right direction where you're trying out different things, but you are really like going on a cruise, and it's a pleasure cruise, but there's a pleasure cruise full of vampires, and it's got itineraries and it's got logistics for the cruise, a killer map of the boat, and like lots of cool different things like little weapons, charts, all different ideas for running a actual vampire cruise. So I was really pumped to get this in my hands today. It's another thing I got from Exalted Funeral, and dude, it's really good stuff.
I'd like to throw out Where the Wheat Grows Tall. Like I said, I have a pile of zines. I'm looking forward to checking them out over the sort of the Christmas break. But one of the few that I have cracked the cover of by Evelyn Moreau and Camilla Greer. It's sort of a rustic Slavic, old school fairy tale adventure for basically anything. And it takes a look at the legend of the Noon Lady. If you know that, you'll be excited. But really beautiful illustrations and a nice, thick, well-stocked zine. I feel like most of the Zine Quest zines I've gotten from this year are much more bigger than they have in previous years. It's just like, wow, these should all be square bound, baby.
When you start writing is hard. I will tell you from experience, writing is hard. And when I sat down to start writing Rocket to Russia, and then George comes along and we're doing it together, I had every intention on it being like 32 pages. And then once you get started, you can't stop, and you don't want to cut anything out. And the next thing you know, it's a perfect bound book that is, air quotes, a zine. But why shortchange yourself and the people who are going to play this game if you got so many good ideas? So just cram it in there. That's what I encourage. Speaking of bigger books, Escape from Volcano Island by Planet X Games, another thing you could pick up over at Exalted Funeral. This is more of a traditional style RPG, very much in the grindhouse vein that we've come to know and love from Planet X Games, but also incorporates kaiju and a lot of like weird ideas of crawling through a jungle and things that you're going to experience when you're kind of on an island as a whole. So can't say enough good things about the stuff that Planet X has been putting out. All their zines, they just did a weird Western zine. They did a zine recently that was just a heavy metal zine called Magic and Shit, which is just stuff like creatures, special items, and things that you can just drop into any RPG. And I'm loving seeing that lately from a lot of different RPG designers, where it's not so much like we need to give you a game. Here's just a bunch of stuff you can put in your game. So another thing you can find over at Exalted Funeral, anything by Planet X Games, you will not be sorry about picking up. But Escape from Volcano Island, if you're looking for something to sit down with your players with and run a bit of a longer game, that I think is going to be the ticket for you.
Another zine, well, series of zines that you should check out is 1,000 Islands. Fantastic world building, totally system agnostic, Southeast Asian flavored fantasy role-playing world. They're absolutely fantastic, verging on the poetic, beautifully illustrated. I'm pretty sure they're an Exalted Funeral. Four Rogues Trading also carries them periodically, or you could just get them direct, which is always the preferable option, I think, is to buy direct from the creators when you can. I think there's 10 main zines and 2 sort of essays, which are sort of more broad than just RPGs, but they're really great. They just kickstarted a big old hardcover book that'll be coming out, Reach of the Roach God. We're going to have ZXU, who is the writer, on the show next year, and that'll be exciting.
You know, Stu, we end up buying a lot of the same stuff. And, you know, like as you are in a relationship with someone for a longer period of time, you start thinking about the next steps, like moving in together or, you know, getting married. And there's always that merging of households. I would shudder to think what it would be like if you and I had to merge our households, because there'd be like a lot of doubles.
We just send it in a box to Noble Knight and get the credit.
You know, that's a genius idea. And think about that, folks. If you need to make room for new stuff that you're going to be buying or receiving during this holiday season, you got some games that you might not play anymore. Why don't you think about sending in a Noble Knight for their awesome trading program, get store credit, and then buy more stuff and fill all those gaps in your collection. But, you know, speaking about buying direct from the creators, you know, a friend of the show, Banana Chan, has gameandacurry.com, where you can find a ton of great games, board games. They make really great small board games, like small box board games like Lair, Battle of the Boy Bands, stuff that if you're going over someone's house, you don't need a full-size bag for it. You throw it in your backpack and you could take there and have a full night of enjoyment playing. They also just released Zhang Shi via Wet Ink's Drive-Through RPG store. So you could actually download that through Wet Ink's Drive-Through RPG store. And then I got to tell you, if you got a younger person in your life, they did an RPG called Questlings that you can also download at Drive-Through RPG. So there's a lot of different ways you could support a cool artist and their creations, still buying direct or buying through their storefront, which might be on Drive-Through RPG or on Itch.
I want to mention a couple other big things that I've enjoyed immensely this year. Discovering Delta Green was a big part of my summer.
Yeah, it was.
I highly recommend pretty much that entire line. We've covered that in the past episodes, specifically Impossible Landscapes, but the whole thing is really well done. And if you want to get really wildly expensive, I can't speak to the rules. I haven't had a chance to really rip into the starter kit or the core rulebook of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition from Cubicle 7, but I have been reading their remaster, director's cut thing of the Enemy Within campaign. I'm dumb and spent a whole lot of money on the special editions, which are, you know, it's 3 volumes so far in slip cases with, I mean, each volume has 2 books, the main campaign and a companion that expands the content, all with foil special covers and nonsense because I'm ridiculous. But it's a really great read. Enemy Within is one of the best campaigns that came out of the 80s, probably would have been one of the best of all time if they didn't kind of blow the last 2 parts on the dismount originally. But this one, they're kind of trying to put it back the way it was. So volume 4 and volume 5, or volume 4 is completely different and volume 5 is shaping up to be extremely different and satisfying. So far where I'm at reading it, it really does feel like it's going to finally take its place as one of the all-time greats. The collector's edition is ridiculously expensive. You probably don't need to buy that, but you can buy the regular volumes for like $30-40 each, and they're really great.
Yeah, you know what? I like to remain always cautiously optimistic when they return to something and try to kind of get it back on course. But yeah, these are also big ticket and big book items that you can pick up from our friends over at Noble Knight Games, because that's the spot where you want to shop.
That's true. As I said, you should always buy from, the people who make the things, but you can get a slight discount if you buy them off of Noble Knight.
Yeah, I mean, they will be running a holiday sale, and here and there, mostly almost every month, we have a discount code through Vintage RPG.
That is true.
So my final stop, which is shopping with the person who makes it, Adam Bass, one of our favorite game designers, just go to World Champ Game Co. and buy whatever tickles your fancy, because I guarantee you won't be disappointed. Two things I want to shout out, though. Babes in the Wood and Necronautilus were the two big things I think Adam put out this year, along with Campfire, which is amazing. I just don't know how many copies they have lying around at any given point, but if you can find it, Campfire is a must-buy. Necronautilus, Babes in the Wood, and just whatever you find there. Like, Adam has one of those stores where you're just going to be thumbing through and being like, yeah, I like that. I'm pick that up. So between Noble Knight, World Champ Game Co, and Exalted Funeral, I'm covered. So Stu, before we go home on this, you have anything else you'd like to recommend?
I do. Same kind of vibe. Go to Games Omnivorous. I have all of their stuff. They've sent most of it to me, which is very gracious of them, but I would have bought it if they didn't. They just released an anthology of Nate Tremaine's games, which is
good.
Gorgeous hardcover, like out of nowhere, no hype. They also have that series of food-related adventures, which Mouth Brood is part of. Amanda Lee Frank, we talked to her on the podcast a little while ago. Basically, and they do Mouse Ritter, everything that they did. They were also collaborated on the Putrescence Regnant Merkborg record module thing, which is pretty great. Basically, like Adam's stuff, the whole store is just full of beautiful things that are cool. I could attest to all of their products have a really great feel to them. I don't know if it's just like different European paper stocks. Their sizing is a little different. Everything just has a nice vibe. Everything's well designed and durable and well worth the money. You should definitely support them too.
Absolutely. So this was another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG podcast, where we really just wanted to focus on putting over our friends, putting over the people we work with, and putting over the people we love. So if you are shopping this holiday season or just shopping in general, definitely check out World Champ Game Co., Game and a Curry, Exalted Funeral, and Noble Knight Games. You'll find everything that you're looking for, or go get gouged on eBay. So with that, we are going to wrap this up. Stu, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG, where I've posted about just about all this stuff. And if I haven't posted about it yet, I'll be posted about it next year.
Damn right. And you can find me on the Twitter and on Instagram at John McGuire RPG. I'm posting more because I'm doing stuff. And, here I am. You can also check out my RPG over at Exalted Funeral, Rocket to Russia, 3-2-1 action, available now. You can also, if you don't mind, like, review, and subscribe to this podcast, because when you do, it really does help other listeners to find us. And if you love the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We've got early release episodes. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at Stu's book, still tentatively titled Experience Points. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at my RPG, 3-2-1 action, and all the adventures that we're going to be coming out with. We've also got a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. Happy holidays, and may the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dego West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.